I'll call the meeting to order. It's 6:11. Thanks for the patience, everyone. Welcome. Up first, we have our consent agenda. That includes our prior minutes from the September 17th meeting and a number of policy reads, and then one informational only procedure. Any discussion, questions, concerns from the board about those? Okay, so I'll then make a motion to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Miranda?
Aye, sorry.
No problem. Mort?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Okay, so that brings us to our public comment part of our
Can I
meeting.
just do something under prioritization?
Oh, yes, sorry,
We
of course.
have,
Right,
we have a union grievance that falls under mine, but I would like to hold it until the end.
yes, so we can let
Yeah,
everyone
just
go.
keep Morgan and Jamie.
Morgan and Jamie, sure, of course, yeah. We'll do that at the very end. Okay, so for our public comment, I see a few, there's no one virtually, eh?
Correct.
And Jared, and I'm not behind you. Hi, welcome. Are you here for public comment? Okay, so, and both of you would like to speak today? Okay, great. Well, welcome, and please feel free to, whoever would like to go first.
Good evening. Jared Valancourt from Berkshire. The Vermont Agency of Education recently released the statewide assessment results in the 2024-2025 school year, and they confirmed that students continue to struggle with reading, math, and science. Knowing this, can you please explain why students in our school district are still receiving emails from staff members containing links that bring them to unsolicited websites promoting transgenderism and other gender ideologies? Some of these websites include the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association, Transgender Resources listing by GLAAD, and Transgender and Intersex Africa, to name a few. How is this helping students to be better at reading, math, and science? A presidential executive order titled Ending Radical Indoctrination in K-12 Schooling, signed on January 29, 2025, supports my opinion that this school district should reprioritize its focus and the management of our tax dollars to promoting academic achievement over the promotion of gender ideology. Thank you.
Jared, can I ask you a question?
Not typical.
Well, I just want you to clarify your statement. Is it a targeted email or is it in a signature box?
Censor lines.
Okay.
They're basically clickbait that says, what's this? What does this mean? For more information. Talked about this a couple years ago too. Teachers doing that.
Okay, thanks, Jared. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Susie Casimir.
Oh, yeah, nice to see you
Yeah.
again. It's been a while. How are you? Welcome.
Yeah.
And since you haven't been here for a while for a public comment, it's usually 2 to 3
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank
I got
you.
2 issues.
Okay.
So one real quick, I know you've been facing a lot of discussion about what's being taught and what you're supporting, and I just wanna say, not all kids are where everybody wants them to be, so I'm grateful that there are avenues to support the kids where they are. And to me, safety is first, and I know lots of kids who are in a situation where either there's being harassment or they're questioning their sexuality in any form, that they have a safe place. The suicide rates on these children, or the attempted suicide, is very high. So I think safety has to be first, and I support you in what you're doing. The other issue is what's going on right now with schools, and I just didn't know if anybody had an answer around when we negotiated the charters or can't remember, the articles of agreement, there was a statement in there that if a school was gonna close, that there was gonna be a vote in that town. Does that still stand? And that's under threat right now. I know they're requesting the redistricting to have that language in there. Does anybody know where that is right now?
In the redistricting task force, you direct me to, I can get information to Susie about.
Yeah, Lynn can follow up with you about the what's happening at the state level with regard to, you know, existing articles of agreement and how those are gonna intersect with
Do
the
our
plan that comes.
Existing articles still have that in there, or it does? Okay. All right. Markham's gonna talk. Okay,
Yeah, but we can follow up with you about that and that, what that interface is gonna be with the state plan for our
well,
system.
it's in question right now. I
Yeah.
am seeing what's going on there. I just didn't know if ours currently had that and where we
Yes.
thought we would land.
I can follow up on
Great,
that question.
thanks.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay, so moving on, that brings us to our spotlight. We have 2 spotlights tonight, so I'll start with Michelle Irish.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm here to talk about our family engagement team, and Erin is one of our family engagement coordinators who is works out of this building here full time, out of the Enosburg High School, middle and high school. We also, and I'm really focusing tonight on attendance. It is a sliver of the work that the family engagement team do, but I wanted to kind of share some of the updates and changes to how we treat attendance, and some changes in our policies and how those are kind of playing out in reality. So go ahead, Courtney, skip to, go back, yep. So this is our team of family engagement staff. We have now 8 people who have family engagement assignments in our schools. About half of them are full-time family engagement staff in some of the bigger schools, and then the other half are a combination of family engagement and school counselors typically. So they're holding sort of both roles, parts of or whatever, in a different variety in every school. So Amy Jarvis is the family engagement coordinator at Sheldon Elementary. Courtney Scar is both a school counselor and family engagement at Montgomery Elementary. Derek Lewis is the school counselor and family engagement at Bakersfield Elementary Middle School. Sarah Fortin is school counselor at and family engagement at Berkshire Elementary. Erin is here at Enosburg High School. Janessa Higgs is a combination school counselor family engagement at Enosburg Elementary. Melanie Gross is family engagement at Richford Elementary, and Taylor Soul is the family engagement and teaches part-time health at Richford Junior Senior High School. So the next slide is going to be kind of a really broad strokes overview of the different duties that the family engagement staff have. So I said one sliver of it is attendance, where they're tracking, weekly tracking and notifying parents of students who have missed a number of school days. They also do a lot of family and student support, create intervention plans, and often do home visits. There's also coordination and or participation in things like behavior support team meetings, student support team meetings, and coordinated service plans for those students who need sort of involvement from the mental health agency, sometimes DCF, and our schools to really wrap around them. They are the school liaisons for our McKinney-Vento homeless education program, which means they're helping to identify and refer students to myself. They are supporting and coordinating transportation needs in many cases, and also supporting families by connecting them to resources that they might need to find housing. That is another large component. Outreach coordination event planning is, I didn't put a lot of bullets under it, but it can be almost anything. So we have a variety of family nights, that happened, so they often will work on those. We have a number of events that have been planned. We had last year there was a coat drive or winter clothing drive that one of our family engagement staff did. Erin has worked on a number of things, including a blood drive, a passport drive to help with those kids that are working to get passports to do the school trips, so they were able to access that right here, and it was also open to a variety of other families. There's a lot of other family nights like math night, literacy night. They often have a lot of involvement in that. They are also working with DCF on things like ed stability, which is when students are placed in foster care homes that either they came from this district and are placed in a foster care home outside of our district, but maintain school here. So there's a lot of coordination that happens with that. And also sometimes there's best interest determinations that need to happen if the student's home is not where they originally were from, in the school they were from. So we do a lot of that work. There's student services work that goes on. This is a lot of social emotional skills development. Many of them are doing whole class instruction, especially the ones that are also part-time school counselors. They're doing skills development and intervention one-on-one and in small groups with students. They may be doing school one-on-one counseling, and they may be case managing our students who have 504 plans, which is a disability plan that's not quite the same as special ed. And then another area is really family caregiver communications. So a lot of them participate in the school newsletters. A lot of our schools have TVs in the lobby, which will run slides. So they may be organizing those slides and also doing some of the social media for their schools. So it kind of depends on which school they're in and what their roles are. But that's a sample of events. Erin, did you have anything you wanted to add or highlight since you're here tonight?
I guess one of the things that I do often is home visits. It's one of the, I think, pieces that is really helpful to parents to meet them where they're at and determine their needs, not in the school building. So it's a little more personal, and it gives them the opportunity to ask for services that they may not ask for in an IEP meeting or in a meeting with a principal. So I think that's something that I've focused a lot on the last couple of years.
Oftentimes it's resource coordination, so helping families if they are looking for fuel assistance, they might need help filling out that paperwork or accessing other financial services. They also, I know we've had a number of people who've helped, especially people who serve the younger children, helping families with developing routines for morning and evening so that they have a smoother access to get into school, so they're not missing the bus and they're getting here on time and they're ready to go when they get here. So helping parents kind of develop some of those plans and routines at home has been really helpful.
I think there's a direct correlation to the attendance work that we're doing to try to promote regular attendance in our youth.
Absolutely. We're going to get to more of that. So one of the shifts that we're making is a shift from what was considered, I think probably most people think of as truancy versus something called chronic absence. And truancy is really looking at those unexcused absences and how many of them you can have before you either lose credit for a class or we have to make a report to DCF or we have to do an affidavit with the state's attorney's office. And chronic absence is really looking at is missed instructional time. And I think that the instructional time is so critical that kids are in school. Part of that instruction is very different than it was even 10 years ago, where a lot of it is collaborative. A lot of it is done where the teacher is supporting students to make sense of their learning. It's not so much like being like when I was a kid, my mother could stop by the office and pick up a packet that I could do if I was going to be out a couple days. That's not the kind of instruction that's happening in our classrooms anymore. So like that packet work is not easy to make up. You got to be there in order to really engage in that instruction. So we're looking at the academic impact of those missed days and then using some positive strategies to support attendance improvement with our kids. So the definition of chronic absence is missing more than 10% of the school year, which really can equate to as little as 2 days per month. And so I think that's for a lot of people, they realize like, wow, that's not a lot of time. The research shows that as little as 2 days a month makes an impact on their ability to read and write and do math and all the other things. So looking at improving chronic absence, it's a key component of improving our graduation rates, increasing our academic achievement, and giving kids the best chance at school, being able to be successful at school and after they get out of school. There's some research that shows that kids who miss a lot of school in pre-K and K are less likely to be reading on grade level by third grade. That's one of our board goals. So we need to support that attendance improvement so that we know kids are accessing that instruction and have the best chance of reading on grade level by third grade. So just a couple shifts in practice. We have revised our attendance protocols that went live this fall. So we now have a definition for excused absence that we didn't have before, a little more clarity on that. We do require medical documentation for extended absences, and we're more consistent from school to school. We have done a lot of calibration with on-the-ground staff, school administrative assistants, guidance counselors, school counselors, family engagement team, and school nurses to kind of give them training on, the importance of school attendance. We're also looking at attendance through a lens of multi-tiered system of supports, which is different than we've done before. So like we do with reading and math and behavior, we're also looking at attendance in that way. So we're looking to track all of those absences using reinforcements and growth-focused interventions, and then attendance support plans for those kids who are showing to be at risk early on. So as they start to miss days in the fall, we start to put in plans to help them to improve their attendance. A fun story I'm going to share with you is at Richford Junior Senior High School last year. We kind of launched an importance of attendance, and they instituted an attendance challenge in their advisories last year, and so they were competing essentially for good attendance, which meant that they got I think the TA with the best attendance got some kind of reward at the end. I don't know if it was some kind of pizza party or something like that. And one of the story I heard was that there was a student who was going around on his electric scooter, getting his friends out of their house and into school because they wanted to be able to win the challenge. So it was using those really natural supports of other students to encourage and promote good attendance, which I thought was a really great story. And I don't think it was something we expected from that intervention, but it had a really positive effect. So we're starting to see the shifts of that. We're also looking at developing school-based attendance teams, which are really looking at the data, seeing what the data is telling us. You can switch, Courtney, to the next slide. And not having it held by one person. Erin can't be that person to change the attendance trajectory here at Enosburg High School. It's going to take a team of people, and it's going to take us messaging lots of important messages to families about the importance of attendance. And so we've started doing that through a lot of our through our school messenger. We did a blast about the importance of attendance in September as Attendance Awareness Month. Erin often sends out notes before vacations to kind of remind people to, the importance of attendance. So we're just trying to kind of raise the bar on attendance with all of our schools. So looking at what are some of the root causes, what are the barriers we can identify and remove, and then also some asset-based positive reinforcement. This might be hard for people to see, but it's chronic absence rates by school. From the dark blue line is last year, and the light blue line is this year. Obviously, we are early in the year, but this is for chronic absence. So what you'll see is the higher the line, the more students we have meeting that chronic absence threshold of more than 10% per year. So so right now, everyone is seeing improvement over last year, which I think is a direct result of some of our messaging and some of our interventions. And then it is early in the school year, but I was on a call today and they said that as early as October, those rates can be predictive of what your rates are going to be for the rest of the year. So that could be a good sign for us. The line with the yellow box does say that more than 10% chronic absence indicates a systemic issue. It's not a student problem, an individual problem. It is really about our system needs to do more to improve the attendance rates of our kids. So it's not about, blaming a parent or blaming a kid. It's about what can we do systemically to support better attendance. I will tell you to use some caution when comparing school to school. Every school in this district has a different length of day, and high schools and elementary schools track their attendance a little bit differently. So some of those numbers could be, may alter the totals. So you just want to be careful going from school to school, but looking from last year to this year is a pretty accurate reflection. And then this is by grade. And I think what you'll find is, and looking at last year in particular, kind of illustrates it well, is that there's higher rates of absenteeism in kindergarten than there is in the first, second, and third grade, and then higher rates of absenteeism in the upper grades, which we are not surprised by. That is a pretty chronic trend over time. But the chronic rates of kindergarten, I think, is a combination of maybe low immune system, kids coming in, they're getting sick a lot, they're missing a lot of days for that. But also, I think the relative importance on the parents' part of understanding how important kindergarten really is. A lot of parents in the early grades are like, oh, it's kindergarten, how important is it? They're not going to fail a course, or they're not going to lose credit if they don't go to school. But they really are missing critical instructional time that could impact whether they learn to read on time and with proficiency. Which is an interesting information. I think that's all I had for tonight.
And I'm going to ask you to share one other thing.
Okay.
So FNESU is a part of work with, we have Grant. Can you
Yes.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've had that conversation before, but yes, we are partnering with UVM, the Lerner School of Medicine, and some in this region with the Monarch Maples Pediatrics to do an education and health partnership around improving attendance. So we have a couple of joint projects we're doing, and then each of us has our own kind of work that we're doing in our sites. So with Monarch Maples, we have worked on what's called a bidirectional consent form. So we have one single consent form that parents can sign to allow educators to talk to the pediatricians, and for the pediatricians to talk to the educators about attendance-related information. And then we also, they have added a screening question around attendance to their well child screenings from ages 5 through adolescence. And so the question that they're asking is, how many days of school have you missed in the last month? And then they are able to chart that and put that in their, flag it in their chart as one of the potential, I forget what they call it's a medical term, but it's an area they might flag for risk. And then they're able to offer resources, and they have a nurse care coordinator. Is that Rebecca's role? So she's in very close contact oftentimes with our school staff to be able to talk about, barriers to attendance and improving those attendance from when there's a medical issue. And then, was there anything else? I'm trying to think of the other initiatives, but those are the two biggest ones I think we're working on together. And then we meet regularly to kind of talk about how the system is working together.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. You mentioned that our schools within the district have different start and end times. I believe you said pretty much all of them do. Is that because of bus schedules primarily?
Yeah.
So they don't fluctuate?
They all
5-10
connect.
minutes or?
They all connect. Those buses have to go.
The length of day is static, but each school has a little bit different length of day.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, it's really amazing to see the kind of evolution over, starting with kind of the COVID era when we started a lot of this family engagement kind of in the rebound after that very difficult couple of years. And I think it's really beautiful to see such a strong and well-coordinated effort across the system.
Yeah.
To really look at the systems of support that help kids learn, because if they can't get to school, they're not, and it's so multifactorial. So being able to engage with families where they're at and hear what their needs are that best support the family and best support the child.
Yeah.
That whole kind of wraparound. I love that we're doing that, and it seems like a pretty amazing group of people with a great skill set to kind of help do that in all of the towns. So, yeah, thank you so much. It was a great, but really insightful. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so now we'll move on with Gab for your spotlight.
Did you get it back?
I have it back, but Courtney doesn't have it.
Oh,
So
no,
I'm
she
in the
shared.
meeting,
Okay.
but I can't share my screen, Courtney. Is that what I'm supposed to be doing?
We had some technical difficulties with the slideshow.
I'm not allowed.
I don't know why.
Oh, well, I just tried to link to hers and it says an issue with third-party services due to the ongoing
Yep.
AWS.
Yeah, but I have it on my
Outage.
screen, so.
You should be able to share.
The Amazon Web Services.
I'm gonna add you as a co-host, see if that works.
That worked.
And that's what's been disrupting
Yeah,
all
I
sorts of
can't.
platforms today.
Pick up on
I
that.
can't open cards at all.
I am not going to present because I'm nervous if I touch it.
I'm
But it
gonna
will
do
go
the
away,
same thing for
so.
Lynn's. I'm not presenting.
We'll look at the other.
I'm going to talk to you tonight about needs-based professional learning here in FNESU. Needs-based has to do with both the needs of the people who are accessing the professional learning and also what the district needs or what our initiatives are. In this case, our board goals are driving much of our professional learning work. Oh boy. Okay, we're doing it. When I came on a few years ago, these are some of the challenges that we were sort of facing as we developed and refined the existing professional learning time that we were using for the SU. Time was one of them. So the SU in services are 4 days throughout the year. One is the very first day in August. So, it's really a lot of getting to know you and getting to know the system, and there's a lot of people. And then we have some Tuesdays in those afternoons that we use for SU purposes, and the rest of that goes to school-based professional learning. There are a lot of complex logistics around time, space, human resources, and then multiple buildings and grade levels. Communication is super tricky with almost 500 people and trying to communicate everybody's individual needs. And then the thing that I think is probably the most complex factor is the roles. And I'm gonna can't quite see, there we go. So we have just a vast variety of roles in the entire SU, and when you think about all those different needs, it gets really, really complicated. So there's different positions like paraprofessionals or specialists or teachers. There's also grade level differences. So if you're teaching kindergarten, that's very different than if you're teaching high school. It might be the same role, but it's different grade level. And then there's also different building contexts. So they have their own culture, resources, organization, and needs as well. So trying to meet all of those needs is very challenging. We're also working within the state requirements. So in addition to the board goals, Vermont law requires that we develop and implement needs-based professional learning and that includes equitable, anti-racist, and culturally responsive practices. It's in alignment with also the evaluation policies and continuous improvement plans. So those are further constraints. It has to be embedded within the school day because that's a bargaining part of the master agreement. And then we also need to provide support for new staff members, which is, we do a really nice job at that with our coaches and mentoring in each building. So all of those things. Here's the general structure for SU-wide professional learning. We have the 4 SU days that I originally talked about. So August, October, January, and March. And then we have some Tuesday sessions. So on those early release days, teachers are working in K-8 literacy. That's one Tuesday. A second Tuesday is K-8 math. And also middle school interdisciplinary teams, global citizenship and science are also meeting on that Tuesday early release. The other two early releases go to schools. The interdisciplinary work that's happening right now, global citizenship is working on interdisciplinary units, and then the science middle school team is working on STEM fair. And then we also have instructional coaching and mentoring going on sort of within the structure of the day. And that's weekly, for at least weekly with an instructional coach for brand new teachers. So, this has taken a few years to develop, but we have narrowed this down to 5 priorities of learning based on the needs related to the board goals. So, remembering that the board goals are around increasing social emotional skills, academic proficiency, specifically in reading, and then implementation of portrait of a learner. We've kind of broken out some of those. So school culture is related to the social emotional skills, responsive and high leverage practices, portrait of a learner implementation, and MTSS, all related to academic proficiency. And that's related to portrait of learner implementation. And then reading mastery and MTSS also combined to address the reading goal. I think one thing we've worked really hard at with these priorities is trying to connect the work that's happening on the ground, what teachers are doing every day, to the learning that they're doing so that it doesn't seem like something else. Because I think especially when it's spread apart so far from August to October, then there's this long stretch to January and then to March, it can sometimes seem disconnected from the day to day. And so we've really tried to close that gap a little bit. A typical professional learning day on one of our SU days, there's a morning message where we all come together in the auditorium. Then we have some choice sessions that are all related around the 5 priorities. And in the afternoon, there's role-specific work. So for instance, all the high school teachers are working on portrait of learner implementation. The K-8 teachers are working on math instruction. And middle school teachers meet in content groups to work on what they're working on. The family engagement coordinators get together and coordinate across district. So any team that needs to meet to coordinate across the district is meeting during those afternoon times. And then there's a school-based checkout. This year we're using some technology to help us, and this particular technology, it's called SCED, and it allows us to require sessions. So if you're looking at this image on the left-hand side, those red ones are things that are called they're pinned. So we can, tell people you need to go to the auditorium. It's just going to be built in your schedule. The color coding kind of helps separate the priorities. So you can see in the green there, it says MTSS. So we can see how many sessions are for each priority. We can kind of keep track of that, and people they want to focus on a particular priority. It just makes it more visual. The descriptions and materials can be added by any presenter. So we have a few outside of the district presenters, for instance, coming in October. They can get in there and put their slideshows in ahead of time. They can write their own descriptions. Sort of takes a lot of legwork off of Courtney's mailbox, and makes just communication smoother for teachers who are trying to sign up for things. So yeah, it's allowing, these complex logistics are a lot easier with this platform. We're pretty excited about it. Again, it allows us to just be more efficient, gives teachers and paraeducators choice about what they're doing within a certain framework, so we can really like structure what we're doing, but still give people options about what they're accessing. And it's making communication a lot clearer, which was a huge request in our data collection. So this initial design, it's been a pretty heavy lift. There's a big team of stakeholders working on it, and we used a lot of data collected throughout the various in-services to make shifts and changes in what we were doing. We'll continue to refine and iterate, but we've made a lot of changes, and I think we're in a really good place. I mean, crossing my fingers that Thursday goes okay, but things have been pretty smooth so far, I think. And I think people are loving the fact that there's not agendas in folders everywhere, all over the place, and they can just go to their session. They can see all the materials there. So, yeah, that's that.
Thank you, Gab.
Thank you so much, Gab.
We'll try to unshare here.
I have a question. This is Akua.
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Hey, Gab, I was interested in, from in terms of how you're designing the program. I'm interested in the teachers' participation in that. Like, are there surveys or focus groups? Are there teachers who are on a committee helping with the design component of this and what's being offered to them and how it's being delivered?
Yeah, there's lots of survey data. We collect a lot of data at each in-service, and we have been doing that consistently. And then there's a team of people that have, it's a big team. We start meeting in like January, and it includes some instructional coaches. I'm trying to think who the teacher members were. I don't think there were teacher members on the big team. What we did was we got together a stakeholder team to give us feedback. We met at the central office last year, and they gave us specific feedback on an original design. So we presented something to a group of teachers, and they gave us feedback on it in last year's iteration.
Could you elaborate a little bit on some of those choice sessions? Can you talk a little bit about teachers as presenters as well?
Sure. We just requested, I'm not sure what to say
Well,
about
the promising practices idea.
Yeah, I mean, we pushed out some ideas about what would be connected to people's learning, and we do have some teachers, especially in math, that are presenting. There are some small groups around the district that are regularly meeting and learning about things, and so we're pulling on them to present and be part of the actual presentations of the 1 hour sessions in the morning. So we're trying to build some capacity there. I mean, I guess that's another way.
I can share a little
of
bit about
stakeholders
the social emotional skills district team, and like we did some walkthrough data last year and then made recommendations for workshops that would be beneficial based on that data for teachers, and then some of those people actually are hosting those workshops, so it's coming straight from the field.
Yep. And I mean, I think all of these teams, so the MTSS title is also a SIT team. So there's teams out there that are related to all of these things. I mean, all of this work is connected. None of it is unrelated to the board goals. It's all interconnected.
And so just following up on the question I asked, stepping back to the data, the survey data specifically that you're getting, Can you talk a little bit about how that then is being used, and is it quantitative versus qualitative? Like, what are you doing with that data, and then how is that feeding back into the process of design and development of the program?
Yeah, it's both qualitative and quantitative. And I'll just give you a few concrete examples. The communication was a huge, like everybody was like, we can't find anything. We don't know where to look for it. There was just a lot of complaints about the communication. And so we really tried to address that concern through the use of SCED. And it took us a while to figure out, like, how are we going to solve that problem? And, we will take further feedback on, how we're asking for feedback in the forms about the things that we've made changes about. Another example is last year we had morning sessions that you chose one group at the beginning of the year and you stuck with that group throughout. And the feedback from the field was just those morning groups, because the meetings are so far apart and you don't really get to know your group, that those were really hard times. You show up in October and you don't know the people in your group, and you do something together, and then you leave and you come back in January and you have to reorient, you have to reintroduce, somebody new has joined the group, that kind of stuff was really clunky. And so we changed the morning so that they're just one-time sessions that you're going to go get something that's quick and that you need and is going to be impactful like the next day, and then you're done with that session. So it builds on your existing practice, but it doesn't require you to get to know a group of people and learn with them and have a big goal and do it throughout the year. So I think that was one of the big complaints last year, and one of the iterations that we made that was is a big improvement that people are going to really like. So those are just a couple examples, Akua, of how we use the data. But the team is looking at the data, and the stakeholder team that met last year they also looked at the data and kind of teased out their themes. They picked out themes from the data as well.
That's helpful, Gab. Thank you. And I think as we continue to track and follow this, it would be great to, maybe even at an aggregate level, have that as a part or a component of what we hear for future presentations related to this.
You bet.
Data. I just mean having, tie into the data a little bit. Specific teacher data.
For sure. Yep, I hear you.
Great, thank you so much, Gab, appreciate that. So that brings us to Morgan.
And I'll start by just giving everyone a reminder that we need warrants to get approved and sent back to the bookkeepers on a timely basis. We've had a struggle getting some of those warrants out, so please keep an eye on your emails and either reach out to them or me with questions, but please push those through to the extent that you can. Everything other than the budget is informational in my report. I did put some information in there on rebidding the copier leases 1 year early. I think that's going to put the schools in a better position given the increases that are coming down from some of the vendors based on the new tariffs. So I don't need a motion. I would be bringing you contracts in the spring to approve. But if anyone thinks that's a horrible idea, this is a great time to let me know that.
No, that seems like a wise move.
Okay. And so Courtney will bring up the presentation. Sorry I was not with you last month.
They missed you.
Mm-hmm.
The person who gave your report was not nearly as insightful.
So here we are at our second budget meeting, again, hopefully on schedule to finalize this budget by your December 16th meeting, if that's still the date that the meeting is being held.
Yes.
Having a little trouble keeping up with some of those. Board goals, we've talked about at your local meetings, and I think you all covered this as well at the SU level last month. We'll go on to enrollment. We are definitely seeing or predicting an increase in enrollment in the SU as a whole, more specifically with the 4 schools in NMV, and relatively flat enrollment on the Enosburg-Richford side. That's based on the last 5 years of history up through October 1st of this year, and projecting out based on graduation data from one grade to another, as well as birth data that we can get. We'll spend a little time on this slide, and this is one, at least as we refine it for the 2 district budgets, we will include it in the material that we send out to your voters. In general, in terms of staffing, the proposal we have on the table today is down a small number of staff. I think it's just under 2, and then that's offset by proposing moving 1 position in from the Enosburg-Richford budget to the SU budget, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now, we're guessing at health insurance increases. We should have the number this week, the number that VHI is going to propose to the state for their increase for next year. So the next time that you see this budget, we will have probably as real a number as we're going to get for health insurance. It would be great if it's in single digits. I've not heard anyone say that it's going to be. I think the 13.7, which is what we had last year, is probably a little bit high. But you can see in your packet some of the increases that we've seen over the last 7 years. Premium for our gold family plans gone from $17,000 a year to $41,000 a year. And in terms of the portion of your budgets statewide that are being consumed by health benefits, it's really increased from 10% in FY18 to about 15% now. So it is by far, I think, the biggest story in terms of drivers for budgets across the state. We've talked about potential cuts to federal funding in your local boards. For the SU budget, it's primarily a concern around Medicaid and what that does to free and reduced lunch numbers and how that will impact E-rate and after-school funding. Title I is really more of a factor for the local budgets. Both local boards have been working on bringing staff in from federal funding into the local budget. We only have part of 2 people at the SU level, and we think that given the changes that are happening at the local level, it's pretty safe to leave them in there. We'll be discussing next month how much of your unreserved fund balance you want to put forward into reducing the assessment to this budget. Last year we put in just over $500,000. I think we can comfortably put in a little over $800,000, and that would still leave us with enough money in the bank to make payroll in July, August, September before we get any money coming in from the state. And next month, when we look at expenses and revenue, we can talk about that number in greater depth. The census block grant, which is the new chunk of money that funds special education, is slated to increase almost another $300,000 for us this year. This is the last of 4 transition years where they were bringing everybody to their appropriate number. Historically, we had spent a lot less than many districts, so our number has been on a pretty steep incline over the last 4 years. Districts that were high spending initially are seeing declines maybe of a similar statute. And so FY27 is the first year that we are where we're supposed to be with special ed funding. I think Lynn talked a little bit about the changes in where we are budgeting some money this year. The state has told us to pull food service out and put it in its own separate budget. So we will be working on doing that, and the only amount of money in the general fund, the budget that you approve, will be to cover for the shortfall in that fund. So we'll anticipate where that fund is going to end, and part of that money will come into the general fund, and that's how we assess it out to the two districts. Similarly, transportation has been pulled into a separate fund. This is related more to the Enosburg-Richford side, and the state needs to be able to pull out transportation costs when calculating their high school tuition rates. And there's not been really any easy way for them to do that. So we will put that in a separate fund as well. And at the local level, you'll see a separate line for transportation apart from your SU assessment. And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation tonight around some of the staff that we have been paying out of the supervisory union, primarily because it's more efficient to do it that way rather than that they have a specific central office function. And so the ones that are on the top of my mind are folks like the instructional coaches and Robert Hickey, who's doing a lot of the tech integration work in their schools. We're paying them out of the SU. We can then deploy them to all of the schools based on need. But we know that there's a perception out there that that helps to feed about central office being big compared to school budgets. So we kind of want to get a sense from you about where you are comfortable leaving those staff. For special education teachers, we are not assessing it out dollar for dollar, but we're kind of tracking them separately. And we know that these 3 teachers are going to be in School X next year. We're reasonably sure of that. We can do that with the coaches, and we can bill those out in that way, pull them out of the so-called central office bucket. Or if that's a concern that we're having and you're not hearing on the street, we can continue on as we have for the last few years. So Lynn, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I just think it's important to remember that one of the reasons that we've done it at this level is because we could do it a lot more efficiently than if we were to hire pieces of these positions in some schools. And some schools would be able to fill them and some wouldn't. So our theory of action, I think, is right, that we want them to be centralized, but it's kind of perpetuating a misconception that all these people at central office, and it's really, when I can distill it down to its simplest terms, like this is another result of being in a supervisory union. If we were in a district structure, this wouldn't be an issue because it would be one budget. But because we're in a supervisory union and you have 3 budgets and you have 9 separate schools that are working within that budget, it is more complicated. So it's the right work, it's just a matter of how we're reporting out on it to the public. So that's where we want the board to give us some feedback.
So, I've said this a lot over the years, that I think that people misunderstand this perceived bloat, in quotes, of the central office and really don't understand the complexity that is managed out of the central office by really not all that many people, physical bodies and people doing the work for such that's complicated across so many different schools. So I really think that we can continue to try to talk about that public perception and misunderstanding of it, but if it fiscally and logistically makes sense for those to be embedded in the SU budget, then that's where they should be. We shouldn't make shifts that harm how you can allocate human resources based on misunderstanding of and incorrect perceptions of the central office.
Do you want to say more about the 2 options that you're thinking about?
So the way that we assess this out, and because we don't raise taxes as a supervisory union,
Right.
all the money is eventually going to NMV and ER. For the folks around this table right now, it's done through the central office assessment for the most part. So we're not trying to track our time spent in one school or another. We know that we're all kind of moving around or we're serving everyone. And that, that bill gets split out based on your enrollments. So we just look at the number of kids and we allocate it out that way. Food service will be done the same way when we move that chunk of money, and transportation similar as well. For the coaches, one option we could do is we could say, whoever, Leslie Rainville is going to be in Berkshire 3 days a week next year, Montgomery 2 days a week. And so we're going to send a bill to Berkshire for her 3 days, and we're going to send a bill to Montgomery for her 2 days, and split it out that granularly, where it'll be very specific to an expense tied to a school. It does limit the flexibility, or we have to do a lot of adjustments mid-year when we learn that, oh, Leslie, because there were more needs in this building, has changed her schedule.
But that's the same budget. That's still the NMB budget, whether it's at Montgomery or at Berkshire.
It is, but it could, in theory, be we've pulled her out of Berkshire and we put her in Richford, and so now it's a different budget. Or we've, on the Richford side, we've pulled her out of Richford Elementary and put her in the high school, and now we have to track it differently for high school tuition.
Okay.
So it's more work and more shifting midstream. In theory, it's more exact.
It might be more exact, but the one, I think it would be simpler for people to understand that the majority of the people that we're talking about spend like 90% of their time in schools. But the part that makes me nervous is, unless we have an agreement from the board that we still get the same flexibility and know that it will even itself out across the system. Right now, we can change it up with when we hire a new teacher in January. We can say, well, you're not in that school for 2 days anymore. You're there for 1 day because you're now in this school for 1 day to support this teacher. And that's the one piece that would be harder. And I don't know from the audit perspective how close you have to be to exact.
Yeah, we do this for grant-funded people, which is where the real concern is. Anyway, I don't know if that's as much a concern. And we could work on the presentation piece of it better, because we're kind of doing that with special educators. We know who the 2 special educators are in Berkshire. We're not billing that back directly because it's special ed and we're not supposed to do it that way. But we can still, when we present stuff, and certainly as we are now needing to dig into ratios and staffing numbers more, we're going to be allocating those folks out to schools, even if we're not exact.
And Morgan, just to back up, remind me what's precipitating precipitating this possible shift in how we are budgeting these.
I think it's the conversations that we're hearing in the community and in budget meetings, that there's this, big growth at the central office, and that's money that's not being spent at schools.
But it's money that's being spent on the staff that are in the schools.
Yes.
This is another
It's a
example of
perception.
the supervisory union, right? Like,
Yeah.
it would be really easy to understand in a district. It's more complicated in the district.
But the way that you've been doing it is the most efficient, streamlined, and flexible as far as placement of people where they are actually needed on the ground.
Correct.
So I think that's the answer. We can continue to kind of try to communicate that to people who might feel confused or concerned about misperceptions around the central office. But if that's the most efficacious way to budget and allocate human resources, then that's the way I think we should do it, and stick with our current status quo. Because again, I understand the kind of optics, and I'm not, but they're incorrect optics.
Right.
So, our job is to try to clarify that and for people who are concerned about it, because when you parse it out and explain it, it's really very clear. But, I'm happy to hear from other people about that. I just don't think we need to make fundamental shifts that gum up the works and make things more difficult and cumbersome because of incorrect perceptions around central office budget.
I think it would be good, the challenge is that the people who maybe are perpetuating this narrative don't always come to our meetings. So maybe it would be just something for us to remember as we're preparing for budget and as we're having conversations in our communities about the reality of having these positions is about flexibility, and it is wholly centered on efficiency, where we would need significant number of more staff if it was all budgeted locally.
Right.
Okay. You go to the next.
Let's just make sure that everyone, other board people feel kind of comfortable with landing in that place. More Akua, any thoughts around that?
No, Mary, I agree with you. I think you're right on the money on that one.
Okay.
How many instructional coaches are there now in the district? The coaches that are in the SU? 2?
We have 3 this year. We have 3 that are funded out of our budget. 1 that's in the ER budget that we're proposing moving in, and 1 that's quasi-instructional coach that's mostly paid out of the Title I money.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So you went over these changes at your meeting last month. One difference is there are a couple differences. Under central office, still showing a reduction in the early ed director, just changing that contract from a 260 to, I think, a 210 day per year. And then instead of moving Mary Ellis out of the federal grant, proposing moving a coach out of the Enosburg-Richford budget into the central office budget. That position, when it was created, was, I think, at least in my mind, tied to the 2 high schools. And we're finding that they're now serving elementary students as well. So it seemed like a better fit to have them here because of that flexibility. If they're only doing 9 through 12, it's kind of easy to justify keeping them in that pocket, but we can't do that anymore. Still proposing a 2-day per week reduction to emerging multilingual teacher position. This is one we haven't been able to fill. And at 1 day a week, it may end up that we're just getting contracted services with that money next year to fill the need. Some changes probably on special education, and my money is on that we'll change it again before you see it in November. The major one that I want to highlight is that, we're showing a small decrease in special ed, but we're actually moving 6 positions over from the Idea B grant. That's the grant that we're using to fund the alternative programs. We're having, I think, a little bit better success in actually filling some of those positions now, and so we're likely to exhaust that grant, assuming it's level funded next year. So we've moved some of those positions in. So even though it's a drop of 0.7 FTE in terms of actual positions, it's larger than that. And then at the moment, no changes proposed for food service. And again, that's going to be pulled out into a separate fund this coming year.
And Morgan, about that food service piece, you said that was at the directive of the state. So that is statewide, that
Yeah.
every supervisory union
Mhm.
or supervisory district is
Right.
going to be doing this. And,
And some of them have done it.
okay,
Because it's Vermont, we've all done it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And so they're being more directive on where they want those
Okay.
costs captured.
and is that connected in any way to the shifts coming ahead from the state plan, or really separate, not
My
not
guess
in
is,
anticipation of that?
yeah, my guess is it's more about getting a better consistency of data.
Okay,
I don't know that for sure, but when we talk about ratios, one of the places where we fall down pretty quickly is food service, because we have our own staff running food service. A lot of places contract it out, and so they're
Right.
showing no employees in that. So I think if they're going to kind of segregate that into its own fund, they can easily sort of take that off the table when they're talking about ratios and trying to compare what different schools are doing or different districts are doing.
yeah, okay. Great, thank you.
In your packet, you will see a report of all the positions. I know you can't see that on there. I just wanted to kind of walk you through how it's set up. That first column is the fund, and you're probably just seeing the general fund in this report. The program column, the second column, splits things up primarily by regular education, special education, and then emerging multilingual learners. We then break things down by location, so you can see on this page, we are trying to track where those coaches are spending their time, even if we're not assessing it differently. And then you'll see at the end the FTE amount for each of those buckets. And again, as Lynn had tipped you last month, we are trying to be a little more exact in terms of our FTEs. So we know that we kind of have to call a teacher a 1.0, and we have to call a paraeducator a 1.0 because that's tied to those master agreements. When somebody like Melissa goes down from a 260-day contract to a 220-day contract, it feels weird to say that she's still a 1.0. So we're kind of prorating those of us who are normally on a 260-day contract. You'll also, in your by email, you got the budget overview. So again, the changes here are pulling food service out for next year into a special fund, and then pulling transportation down into its own bucket as well. We do not yet know what the increase to the transportation contract is going to be. My guess is it will come in around 3.5%, but we will have that number probably around the 1st of December. So maybe not for your next meeting, but for the meeting where you're going to finalize things. And then just broadly, big picture, if you look up top in the sort of general fund, you'll see a big decrease in instructional support, 2,200, and a big increase in 1,200 special education. And a lot of that has to do with those shifts that we talked about, moving some of those paraeducators in from the IDEA-B grant into your general fund, and those position cuts that Michelle is proposing, primarily with the BCBAs that we've not been able to fill, which is offsetting that down a little bit lower. And then the same information only for the general fund on the next packet that I sent. This is about the 15-pager. Again, you start out with the program. We split this out by level so we can pull pre-K expenses out from everything else. And then those different functions, which are replayed in the recap that we just looked at. We also are showing you the FY26 FTE and FY27 FTE, so you can see line by line where we're making those changes from what we have now to what we're proposing. There's a lot of detail in that. I don't expect you all to have looked over it in the last 3 hours. And I think we'll hop to, would you go down 2 slides? Just remind you of, go to the next one. Of this one, this is splitting up the budget by the things that we buy. And that section in red are the people that you hire. And so if we're going to move this budget, we're going to move it by changing what you want to do in terms of staffing. The section in blue, they're important. The section in green, also important, but relatively small and relatively difficult to change. You'll see this next month for your districts as well, and it's very similar. If you go up a slide, Courtney, also what you'll see by your district is we split this out by the things that we do. And so in this one, the green section is kind of direct instruction in front of kids. Most of that is special education. The blue section are a lot of the supports, so student support, guidance counselors, nurses in the local district. Here it would be those BCBAs. Instructional support would be your coaches. District administration is kind of your typical central office. School administration is a lot of the work that we do centrally that's more duties of the school, like Title IX investigations and HHB investigations. Central services, that section in blue between 9 and 10 o'clock, is me, it's Jamie, it's Dominic, it's the kind of the back office stuff, paying the bills. And then, again, this is a floating number, but that red section up top is going to be the local support to the food service program, which we have to do, get to you through the assessment. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions on any of that now. Always willing to field questions offline if people, have very specific line item questions. Why did this line go up $10,000 or this one go down $10,000? You can certainly do that by email or at your next meeting if you're not ready to do that now.
Thanks, Morgan.
And
Appreciate
you can go to the last one you've seen, again, in your 2 local meetings. And this information won't change. Our 2 districts down there towards the bottom, 10% of the state in terms of per weighted people spending. And so unless there are any course corrections for us next month, we will see, we'll bring you anything that we've tweaked in the last 4 weeks, but also a more concrete idea of the revenue picture. And so that will kind of set up the numbers that we're going to be sending to the local budgets to support this. And then hopefully finalize that in December.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Thank you. Okay. Lynn.
We're going to see if Courtney still has access to my slideshow, or
For now, I do.
it's another one bites the dust, potentially. Oh, we've got it.
No, we're going.
Okay.
I didn't lose
Good.
this one, but I'm not presenting.
Okay, that's
We're just
fine.
gonna
We can do
scroll
it this
down.
way. So tonight, in terms of personnel, I don't have anything for action, so it's informational. Sarah Latardo, pre-K paraeducator, has been hired. In terms of resignations, this was actually a reduction. So Sam Firth, who's one of our BTs in Little Rise program, has been reduced to 0.4 FTE, and Mary Barrel resigned from working in the kitchen staff. We have open positions. Again, these are kind of perennial open positions. We're always looking for speech and language pathologists, for board certified behavior analysts. We've had an early childhood special educator and early MTSS coaching position open. We continue to have literacy and math interventionist positions open. We would love to have an in-person teacher for our alternative program. Right now we have an online teacher that is filling that need. For support staff, we're looking for behavior technicians for our alternative programs and for a kitchen assistant. We are also looking for substitutes across the board, teachers, nurses, paraeducators, custodians, and food service. So in some of these court, we'll have to scroll a little down. So in NMV, at this point in the agenda, I want to talk about enrollment trends. Morgan shared some of that information. So he has always tracked for us what the projected enrollment numbers will look like 5 years out. So when we look at NMV and we look at FY26, which is the year that we are in, we have 832 students, and we're expecting in 5 years that number will grow to 969 students in NMV. So if you look at the same projection, you can start to see some trends in terms of the grade levels that those students will be in, and you can see, you will be able to see where the most significant growth is in our schools. If you go to the next portion of that, Courtney, you'll see that the projection has both Montgomery and Berkshire growing at a much steeper rate than Bakersfield. It looks like it has an increase, but it is a pretty steady, slow growth. In Sheldon, we saw a peak in 2024, and then there is a decline that will bring them back to kind of their pre-pandemic numbers at the end of 2031. So overall, there's a little data analysis there with those numbers. We're expecting on the NMV side to see about a 24.6% growth rate over the next 5 years. So that's something that for us to just pay attention to. We're seeing steady increases over there. It is not the same in Enosburg-Richford. So if we look at the numbers for FY26, again, is the year that we are in, we are at 1,070 students, and that's down from 1,105 that we had in FY22. The projection for that number over the 5-year period is to be at 1,060, so down 10 students in the next 5 years. So it's not significant overall, but it is a trend. What we're also seeing is in Enosburg and Richford, we're seeing pretty steady increase in Enosburg through next year, and then it kind of levels out and declines a little bit. At Richford High School, we are seeing a decline. At Enosburg Elementary School, that is kind of unpredictable, both a decline and then it dips back up a little bit to end just about where we were in FY24. At Richford Elementary School, we saw a dip this year, and that's expected to level out and start to regain a little bit of growth by 2031. So you can see we have some variability in the trends on that side of the district that we just need to pay attention to. Any questions on that? Yeah, comments? The last time at your district meetings, I reminded you of Act 73 class size minimums. So I have it in the slideshow for you to refer to. Courtney will make sure everybody gets this slideshow at the end of the meeting so you can see, remind yourself of what those averages are. Each of you got to see what the class size reports were for your district board. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like for both. So the first is the NMV class size report. So one thing to just draw your attention to, we have a minimum average class size policy in FNESU that will come up to your board for consideration. The recommendation is that we actually delete that policy because now minimum class sizes are embedded in Act 73 in the statute. So we can't have a competing minimum class size policy in FNESU. So that is what we've always aimed for, was the minimum average class size by policy. The fourth column indicates what the class size minimums are in Act 73. So when you look across the board, when you look all the way down in Berkshire, they are at or above class size in every grade cluster. Montgomery is also at or above. Sheldon is at or above in all except the 7th and 8th grade is under by 1 in terms of what the minimum class size is. The Bakersfield numbers are very close to the class size. So the average for K2 across all of those levels is 11. And in first grade, the minimum class size is 10, and in second grade, the minimum class size is 12, so they're right between those two. In third through fifth grade, the minimum average is 12. They're at 11 across the board there, so also one away there. They are under in 7th and 8th grade by 1 as well. So even though they don't meet the metrics for minimum class size, they are not significantly behind the metrics for minimum class size in Bakersfield. On the Enosburg-Richford side, they have definitely done some work to attend to the minimum class sizes in the last year. So for Enosburg Elementary, every grade level is above the minimum class size threshold, and that is true also for Richford Elementary School. If we look at our middle schools by section, because in these schools, oftentimes they're split into 2 different sections. The minimum class size is 15 in 6th grade, and our average is over that in both of the schools. In the 7th and 8th grade, the minimum is 15. We are over in Enosburg Middle, and we are over in 7th grade, and we are just under in 8th grade. So we're at 13 in 8th grade, so we're very close. So in the conversations that you're hearing around Act 73, and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the work that's happening in the redistricting committee, I know there's a lot of fear out there about school size and class size, and I had a conversation with some people today about we all have to attend to this, and we all have to pay attention and try to be within, the efficiency of our operational efficiencies of being within those ranges for class size. And at the same time, we are not far off. We're really, really close already. And so I think that there will be some schools that are going to have a really hard time meeting these minimum class size standards in other parts of the state. And so I'm not saying that we won't be touched by some of the things that are ahead, but I am feeling like with the class size component, at least, we're in relatively good shape with some of the shifts that we've made. There is high school comparison data there. If you'll click into that, I don't know if you're going to be able to click in without presenting. I maybe won't have you do that because I don't want to lose the rest of this, but I'll just say something about the high school course comparison data. You'll be able to look at this when Courtney gives you the slideshow. This is something that both high schools have worked hard at, is really looking at how many times they're offering courses, really digging into the number of students in each course. They're looking at where there have been opportunities to share staff. We have done that. We also have looked at attrition when someone leaves a position as an opportunity to really examine, do we need to refill that position or not? And in Enosburg High School in particular, there were decisions made last year based on our class sizes being very low to not fill some of those positions that were left vacant at the end of last year. And it brought our class size numbers much closer to range. We're not there across the board. There are still some that are under, but in general, we are in much better position in terms of class sizes. You know what that means in some cases is we might not offer a course every year, or we might not offer it both semesters. It might be offered only in the spring semester. We're having to make harder decisions about those kinds of things based on our staffing structure and our class sizes, the number of students that we have in our programs. Cold Hollow's class sizes are also linked in there, and they're not specific class size minimums that are connected to the CTE programs. However, we are always looking at are we able to continue to run a program if we have significant declines in enrollment in those programs. So we'll continue to look at that on the ER side for Cold Hollow. Any questions on that? So I will not go deep into this because for those of you who sat through the district board meetings, you already know much of this. But the Vermont Agency of Education, for those new to this conversation, we'll be running a beta test, a self-assessment beta test on the district quality standards. And embedded within those district quality standards are some of our education quality standards. So this fall, within the next month, I'm going to be asked to submit self-assessments from both district boards and from the SU. This winter, there'll be a state of the state report on those district quality standards, the self-assessment, but it'll not be released school by school. They will just talk about what are the statewide trends that they learned from this beta test. Next year, they will work to, some of that got cut off. Next year, we will be asked to self-assess the entirety of, I brought them, if anybody wasn't here for the last meeting, I brought the district quality standards. So we'll be asked to self-assess on all of them. And this year, there is a select group of indicators that we are being asked to assess ourselves on. So these are the rubrics that are associated with the ones that we have to assess. So we'll be working to do that next year, all of them, and in the fall we'll do the self-assessment, and in the winter next year there'll be a state of the state report that does disaggregate data out by supervisory union or supervisory district across the state. There are 2 lines of that slideshow that got deleted. I apologize. So in the slideshow, if you want to dig into the district quality standards, you can do that. And I've also linked to Vermont's education quality standards, and I'm just going to restate this for those of you who are not here. We are required to meet Vermont's education quality standards that are brand new, effective July 1, 2025. And I know, Gab, you already stated this. The first line of our education quality standards are all Vermont students are afforded educational opportunities that are substantially equal in quality and are equitable, anti-racist, culturally responsive, anti-discriminatory, and inclusive. So if you take the education quality standards and you unpack those, it falls into these 6 categories: equitable learning environment, instructional practices, flexible pathways, continuous improvement plans, tiered system of supports, and curriculum content area. So tonight, Gab gave a beautiful example of what our professional learning is focused on within the supervisory union. So if you go to the next slide, Courtney, you can see those things that she talked about and how they are aligned to our board goals. On the left, you can see the colored circles that represent reading mastery, our portrait of a learner work, school culture, multi-tiered system of supports, and responsive and high-level practices. And when you overlay that on top of the education quality standards, that's where our work shows up in the education quality standards. So we've been very strategic in the lead up to this transition towards these ed quality standards. One of the things that I just want to point out here is that on the next slide, the ed quality standards are a separate body of work. Those are rules that were established by the State Board of Education. The district quality standards were rules that were established by the Agency of Education, which isn't typical. Typically, rulemaking is the state board. So the agency developed the district quality standards, and then the legislature eventually passed those district quality standards into law. And so that's why we're here now with the assessment of those district quality standards. So the agency did some work to identify some high leverage ed quality standards to be able to measure those in the district quality standards beta test. So those that I have listed there are the indicators that we're assessing this year. And I hope that's familiar to all of you, all of those indicators, because those are things we try to bring to you regularly. That is really the crux of the work we've been trying to do for the last 5 years. One of the things I will say just in terms of district quality standards, if you can go back up there, Courtney, go back up to the one above that. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been hearing from our community. One of the things that I often hear is a comment about Michelle Irish and her role. We were able to hire Michelle through some of the grant funding we were given during the pandemic. So we had the ESSER reinvestment money, And one of the things that was allowable under the ESSER money was to be able to hire for that particular position within our supervisory union. So Michelle was hired as the director for the advancement of educational equity, and she did some really tremendous work for us in that realm. Since she has been here, her role has significantly evolved, and I think it is unclear to people all that she's holding. So I wanted to take an opportunity tonight to just like kind of bring that to daylight. So Michelle is responsible for holding everything connected to homeless education across the supervisory union. She coordinates all of our emerging multilingual learner work. She supervises those staff members. She supervises all family engagement specialists across the supervisory union and leads a ton of work in that area, as you heard tonight. She's also the one that's spearheading our attendance efforts across the system. She also supervises our SEL coordinator, Cal Yoss, and has played an integral role in a lot of that work across the system. She also has a role, and I never remember the name of the role, in Title IX. Is it?
Initial decision maker. For those of you that are not tied to Title IX, it is a complicated law to navigate, and when a complaint comes in and it goes all the way through an investigation, it gets handed off to Michelle, and she has to spend a significant amount of time unpacking that and making a determination there. She also this year is coordinating everything connected to hazing, harassment, and bullying at the organizational level, and is pushing in to support that work in all of our schools, both proactively and reactively. And we, taking a look at everything that she is holding, all of those elements and pieces of those elements fall under Vermont's education quality standards. So we did make a shift in her title because she is responsible for the elements that fall into Vermont's education quality standards. So she is now the director for the for education quality. So I almost said that wrong. So I just wanted to give some context as to why we have shifted this position, and it is, there's nothing that we're trying to do that's underhanded in this. We're trying to more closely align what her work is. She's still very much focused on supporting all of our students and ensuring that we are continuing the work to be able to disrupt any barriers that exist for any of our students within our system. And she continues to hold a lot of that work, as well as many, many other things. Now I want to just circle back to the work that we have to do in the next month connected to the beta test of the district quality standards. So when Mary and I did our pre-meeting, we talked about there are some elements of this that are really closely tied to governance. There's a whole section on governance. And that's the section that the board is best capable of being able to answer. There are other things like the financial accounting piece or the facilities piece that other people in our central office leadership team will be better able to answer to. So we had a conversation about how are we going to be able to approach doing a self-assessment with the board. So what we came up with is we're going to have a Google survey that Courtney is going to send to all board members. And we're going to need board members to answer it twice. You're going to have to answer it from your vantage point from your district board and the work that you do at those meetings, and then from your vantage point as an SU board member and the work that we do at this level, because they're asking us to measure it both ways. So you can look for that within the next couple of weeks. That will come from Courtney. And what the proposal is that Mary and I will then take that data. We will analyze that board member Google survey results related to governance and those indicators, and then we'll also take the analysis that comes from the central office leadership team. That'll be a variety of people doing a variety of different sections, and put that all together. And then we will work together to determine kind of a scoring methodology that takes all of those pieces into consideration. And more surprise, I haven't said this to you yet, you and I will have to meet to do that for the ER side as well. So what we would plan to do is bring the draft findings back to the two district boards in November and to the FNESU board
in November, and then I'll hit send to the agency. That's right around the time that these are due. Any questions, comments, wonders about that?
Sounds like a plan.
Sound like reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have, it's actually not next up, we'll do this at the end. We have a union grievance that this board will hear tonight related to teacher assignment rights. We'll move that to the end of this meeting. I want to give some quick FNESU updates. We've had a lot going on here. I believe it was the week before last, we had from the Vermont Agency of Education, Secretary Zoe Saunders visited FNESU along with her Chief Academic Officer, Erin Davis, and she came specifically at my request to take a look at the work that we've done around our graduation requirements. As we know, in Act 73, the state is working on what the statewide graduation requirements will be. So we were able to share information around our Portrait of a Learner. We were also able to share information with them about the growing momentum nationwide around the shift to skills. If you can go to the next slide. There are states that are in a study that's really focused on assessing skills as measures of success for students, and it's really focused on what do students need when they leave school to be ready for the workforce, because the workforce that we were preparing our students for 5 years ago is very different than the workforce our students will be entering this year and in 5 years and in 10 years from now. We can't really imagine yet what that workforce will be. So we were able to share some national data and information with them about some really interesting work that's happening. We were also able to share some information from the World Government Summit from 2023 connected to the Skills Revolution and the Future of Learning and Earning study that was done by McKinsey and Company. And what you see on the right is information that has definitely was reinforcing to the work that we had been doing with our Portrait of a Learner. We shared that with them, that these are the 56 skills that citizens will need to thrive in the future of work. And you can see some common themes in there with our Portrait of a Learner. There are definitely some things that we don't have embedded that are also important that are in there. So she spent some time, we started at Richford High School. She was able to speak with the principal at Richford High School. She was able to speak with some fantastic staff members. One is sitting over there on that side of the library. And they did an incredible job of sharing from their perspective what the work that's happening at Richford High School. And they did it. If you could hold on sliding those, I want to talk about those pictures. They did a really good job of representing that work. And after the teachers were finished, there were 3 students that came in and shared about their experience in our schools. And they shared some really interesting feedback about the Portrait of a Learner. And they shared about their experiences, especially having flexible pathways to be able to demonstrate proficiency in indicators. And we were able to share some testimony from students that we had produced a video a couple of years ago that we were able to share with them. And they asked a lot of questions and seemed very eager and engaged in the process. We then were able to shift to Richford Elementary School, and we were talking about at Richford Elementary School the Leader in Me work that they're doing to develop the leadership skills in the students and the connection to the Portrait of a Learner work, and how those two things are going hand to hand. Now, the principal presented before we moved into the library. She had a very brief amount of time. And then the 2 students that you see on the end, those are 5th graders, and they're talking to 2 people in the state's highest 2 positions in the Agency of Education. And they did a phenomenal job of talking about their leadership skills and how they are bringing evidence into be able to demonstrate the leadership skills that they're working on. On the other side of the table, there were 2, if you could go down, there you go. There were 2 other students that were talking about the work that is happening in their room, and they were talking about within their school what they're doing with the Leader in Me program and some of the skills they're practicing. And it was very powerful. We heard back from both Zoe and Aaron about the visit, and they have follow-up questions, and they want to meet with us again to learn a little more about what we're doing. So that was definitely reinforcing. Michelle and I were able to attend the New England Association of School Superintendents Conference that was held in Killington last Thursday and Friday, and the theme of the conference was about skills for the future. And it was, again, the keynote speakers were, it was right up the line of, it was right up our alley in terms of the work that we're doing. And we actually were mentioned in the opening about the work that we're doing here and how that has inspired some of the future-focused work across the state. Another exciting thing happened on Friday. This is another person sitting on the other side of our library. The Educate and Innovate Grant Award during the 2024 school year, we got this award for the NMV schools, and we're able to buy quite a number of 3D printers to use with our students, and gave us equitable access, kind of a level playing field across our schools. This grant was written this year for the Enosburg-Richford district, and they were awarded $15,000 to be able to purchase equipment. You see Russell Montilla there. He is a physics teacher here at Enosburg Falls High School, and he's also leading our students in what was new last year. We had our first robotics team that came together last year, and they were able to do one statewide competition and one out-of-state competition. And so much of this money is going to be connected to supporting our first robotics program. So we're very, very proud of that, and we had positive feedback from the secretary after her visit here. You will see, I'm sorry, not after her visit, during her visit, she had very positive feedback to say to the people who were there. I've attached the letter there so you can see the press release about that grant. So there's some good news, right?
That's amazing.
I would
That's
leave
amazing.
some of that in there.
Absolutely.
And I will end today talking about some state and federal impacts on our schools. So I'll start with the Act 73 Redistricting Committee, and I'll just talk briefly about the updates. As Susie was asking questions today about articles of agreement and where things are going, I think people are definitely tuning into what's happening with the redistricting committee, and I think that's worries about school closures across the state is definitely a common theme. So the Act 73 Redistricting Committee has to have a report to the legislature in December. So they are tasked with coming up with 3 different maps that they present with kind of a lot of data and rationale as to why they're choosing those maps. So what I've learned today is right now they have 3 models on the table that are still under consideration. One is by tech center region. Right now we are our own tech center region, but in the map that the redistricting committee considered, it put Cold Hollow with Northwest Tech at BFA St. Albans. So that would, if they went by that region, it would put all of Franklin County together, with the exception of some of Franklin West would go off to Chittenden County, and some would stay with us in Franklin County. So that's one option, is to look at consolidation along the lines of Tech Center region. The other is a BOCES model, where you might have to help me, Morgan. A BOCES is kind of a governance structure where they would be able to offer supports out to other districts. So you might have all of your SLP services coordinated at that level and deployed out to other districts that would operate below a BOCES. So the only thing I really know so far about this BOCES model is that the proposal includes 5 BOCES, and they would be organized by, when the governor proposed the 5 districts under the original education transformation plan that he proposed, that was really by superintendent region. So those BOCES would be by superintendent region. So when people first saw that proposal from the governor, I think there was shock about the Champlain Valley region, because that was, I think, 35,000 students, something like that. So we would have one BOCES for that region. And then it is unclear to me in that model how many districts or supervisory unions would be under the BOCES. I think my suspicion it would be quite a number of districts or supervisory unions under each BOCES, but that's not clear yet. And the third option that they're talking about, and I don't think there's really any clarity and there's not really a map that I've seen, has to do with a model connected to having regional high schools. So I'm very curious about what their thoughts are there and how they would determine that region and how they would address the need likely for construction to be able to make that kind of a map work. So we'll be watching to see where they go from here, but those are really the three models that, to my knowledge, are on the table right now. Do you want to add anything?
I looked today for that third model, and there is nothing yet. They meet in Winooski on October 28th, and they don't have an agenda out yet for that meeting, but I suspect that it'll be presented there.
I know you're following it very closely, Gavin.
I'm just catching up on October 10th right now, so I don't have anything.
Okay. I'll move on if that's okay.
Of course.
So one of the things that, Mary, when we had our pre-meeting, you asked me to speak about what was related to the cuts to the Department of Education under special education and what are the implications to us in our schools. We don't know yet what those implications are going to be. We do know that what we think we know is it's definitely an impact related to the Office of Civil Rights. They had an earlier impact in terms of some cuts too, so we know that we're definitely seeing some shifts related to the work that they're doing. We don't know how this will trickle down to us in terms of services. I know that Morgan's been on a couple of calls where people are trying to imagine what the impact will be, and we don't know yet. So we'll keep watching that and we will report back out. I reported out to both district boards about the impact of the government shutdown. Nothing has really changed there. The piece that we're most worried about, I would say, we're worried about funding for next school year across the board in terms of federal grants. But for this school year related to the government shutdown, we are worried about food service. We know that our funding is good through November, but once we pass November, if the government is still shut down, we'll have some things that we have to contend with. Do you want to add anything to that?
The only thing I'd add is that, unless Dawn knows differently, we're hearing from the state that they're sort of making arrangements for what happens if the shutdown continues and we don't get any money after November. So it may not be a district by district impact, it may be a state impact, but ultimately we're all going to be paying for it.
Okay.
Is there a version of that where we dip into our reserve fund in order to keep meals flowing for
Certainly
kiddos?
something that we talk about and keep in the back of our mind. Hopefully it's not going to be up to individual districts to do that.
Right.
But
Right.
if it is, that's the logical place to look.
Everyone probably has varying amounts of reserve fund available, so it's really not an equitable way to keep meals coming.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay, I'm going to speak a little bit to a Supreme Court ruling that a lot of people are talking about in our community. So has been a Supreme Court ruling this summer, Mahmoud versus Taylor. And so this was on our radar even before our community members put it on our radar at our last meeting. So we've been working with our attorneys to get some legal interpretation around what does this Supreme Court ruling mean to us and to our work. So one of the things that I just want to cite is, and I just want to say in advance, sometimes it is difficult to unpack language that's written in this way. So we've worked with the lawyers to be able to contend with that. Just need to know if there are tissues in this room.
Up on the, over there on the.
Thank you, Heather. So I'll just start with the citation from the ruling. So what this ruling said is that should curriculum materials more than merely conflict with beliefs, thank you, or constitute exposure to objectionable ideas or lessons in mutual respect, but rather represent clear instruction by individual authority figures to students of impressionable grades, kindergarten through 5th grade, about values in a way that substantially interferes with the family's sincerely held religious belief. So I had to read that many times to be able to understand that. So when I unpack this, the curriculum materials may conflict with beliefs or constitute exposure to objectionable ideas, or they might be lessons in mutual respect. It has to be more than that to be able to hit the threshold related to the Mahmoud Taylor case. So it has to be that a teacher is using their authority to represent clear instruction to the students that is substantially interfering with deeply held beliefs. So having students with diverse backgrounds show up in our curriculum is not something that's just showing that there are differences within our community. It's not advocating for any sort of viewpoint or agenda. So that's the kind of the crux that we'll be watching for. So we can work to unpack that more if you want. But there are other pieces that I'll go to if you're good with moving. There have been some families who have leaned into the idea of, in this Supreme Court ruling, there is an opt-out provision that was connected to the ruling, and the things that were written in the opt-out forms from people within our community say they want to opt out from LGBTQ plus related texts and surveys. In the interpretation from our legal counsel, Vermont law expressly protects and preserves the right to equal access for LGBTQ plus persons to Vermont public schools and their accommodation within. Therefore, we will continue to circulate and conduct surveys that acknowledge and serve LGBTQ plus school members and use materials which acknowledge them as members of equal standing within Vermont schools as explicitly recognized by Vermont law. The suggestion that the Mahmoud decision in any way compels us to opt out, legal counsel disputes that suggestion allows them to opt out of having exposure to those things. Another important thing for us to remember is that in this case, this is a narrow ruling that is specific to the parties involved in the case. However, I just want to say we're hearing the concerns of the community, and there are some things that we agree to commit to. So we do commit to reviews of curriculum texts and materials in advance of their use by children's teachers. Should our review at any point reveal that content intended for use in instruction within the kindergarten through 5th grade would require direct instructions of singular viewpoints that would substantially interfere with a family's constitutional right to direct their child's religious instruction, parents will be provided with an advance notice of those materials and provided an opportunity to opt out. I don't know if that's clear, so I'm wondering if people have questions.
I mean, it's clear to me. I think it's something we're gonna probably need to continue to kind of explain and because it's complicated. And I think that there seem to be varying interpretations of this ruling from the Supreme Court, and it's great to know that we're in conversation with our legal supports that can help parse out complicated legal jargon as it relates to how we operate our schools and our education of students.
So I think,
Sorry, Lynn, I would say, for me, it's not fully clear, right? So the first part talks about, situations where a parent would not be able to opt out, but then the latter portion talks about situations where parents could opt out. And so my question in terms of practice is, if a parent requests an opt-out in the earlier sort of statement there with the letter in terms of if related texts and surveys, are we saying that their student would not be excused
correct.
in those situations?
So I think what that is addressing there is that our curriculum is representative of all of our students, and that's inclusive of our students and our families. So there are students you may see in the curriculum, there might be two moms in a story. There might be a mom and a dad. There might be a student of color in the story. It's really about diverse backgrounds and experiences and making sure that all of our students can see themselves reflected in the curriculum. So that isn't something that is considered something that you can opt out of. But if it is something like, I think the best example I could think of is if there are people whose sincerely held religious belief is that there are only two genders, and we are teaching, or we are trying to say something to students that represents only a singular viewpoint, where it has to do with saying that's not true, there's more than two genders, and if it's really competing with a deeply held religious belief, that's where the opt-out could potentially come into play. But it would have to be that the teacher was trying to say that there is a right and there is a wrong and advocate for a singular viewpoint. So it's not about exposure to, when you look at the very top, it's more than just exposure to beliefs that differ from yours, because you can expect that in the curriculum, that you're going to interact with different ideas and different beliefs than what you have, but it should be representative of multiple viewpoints. So if there is an advocacy for a singular viewpoint, that is something that shouldn't be happening anyway, but we would certainly lean into that and notify families.
And so follow-up question, how does this ruling intersect with prior practice and or case law?
So in terms of case law, there are, it is a shift. I can't cite specific case law to you, Akua, but it is definitely a shift in terms of the parent rights. Currently, there's only an opt-out that's considered in Vermont statute, and it has to do with, I want to say, sexual health and disease prevention.
It's disease prevention and medical intervention.
Yeah. So it is very different than that. So that's what we are used to, that there isn't really an opt-out from the curriculum. So it is a shift to look at it in this way. But I want to acknowledge that I am hearing the families in our community. I understand their viewpoints, and I understand the viewpoints of other members of our community. And I think you've seen it show up. You saw it show up tonight in our public comment. And I think for those of you who are at the NMV meeting, that was really clear that there are very different viewpoints in terms of what people want to see in our education system. And I think that, we have to be able to be analytical in terms of like what falls into the conflicts with the deeply held religious beliefs, and exposure to doesn't do that. I think I missed a second part of your question. You said case law, and what was the other piece?
And prior practice.
Oh, prior practice. So maybe
District-wide prior practice.
Yeah, maybe I did cover that.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. So
how does this then intersect with the Vermont ed quality standards that we are just talking about, where, I mean, you said, how did you say, that the Mahmood Taylor decision binds and applies only to the parties in that case?
Correct.
So I'm trying to understand then, is that now nationally applicable? Does it override state mandates, because we're already identifying through our Vermont ed quality standards that we are bound to have to those kind of that outline around anti-racist curriculum and LGBTQ kind of inclusion and all of those pieces coming from the state. And so how do they kind of work together or not?
So that is a great question, and that's part of what we've been working to unpack with legal counsel. And they've been very clear that in this case, this ruling at this time doesn't apply to anyone beyond the case. And so it says, on review, Mahmood provides no general rule of application for United States educational institutions. And then in the fact sheet, it was outlined for us, the piece that I shared about at the very top, the curriculum materials. And it says, at the end, it says, it must be noted, however, that at this time, the Mahmood decision binds and applies only to the parties in that case. The court there only granted a preliminary injunction to require that the defendant school system provide the suing parents with prior notice and an opportunity to opt out while the claims raised in that suit remain pending, rather than waiting until the end. So it's a narrow ruling for now. They're not finished. So for now, we're still taking actions, but it is, and our actions are in line with this ruling, but we are not required to.
Okay.
And so last question, Lynn, so then when you go down to number 4, where you're talking about an FNESU, and so the reference there, to Pride Assembly, etc.
I haven't talked about that yet, but I will.
Oh, okay. All right, perfect, yeah. Just trying to get further clarification on, the practice of this ruling in our district.
So there's some misconceptions in our community about what is being called a Pride Assembly. So I want to offer some clarity about that. So on June 7th, 2023, would have been 3 school years ago, there was a different administrator in play. That our current principal was not there yet. There was a school-wide end-of-the-year celebration. Those assemblies generally run between 30 to 45 minutes. At the end of the assembly, there was a Pride History Month statement that was read. It was in June, and the intention was to be able to help students to understand where Pride history came from and what it's connected to. That was a 1-minute, 26-second portion of that assembly. I had Courtney pull the video today, and if board members want a transcript of what was stated in that assembly, I'm happy to share that with you. I have reviewed it, and it was very fact-based, and it was connected to the Stonewall riots and how in 1999 President Clinton declared June Pride Month. So that's really the theme of what the message was. At the time, it did get to me through some chains with parents at that time, and I had a conversation with the leader at the time about, there wasn't anything wrong that was said in the assembly, but developmentally there were K through 8 students that were in that assembly, and maybe because it wasn't information that was going to be accessible for our youngest learners, maybe it would have made more sense for those students to be released and that the information was aimed at our middle school students. So that was a conversation that had already happened. I don't know of any other cases where this has come up, but it is being talked about in our community like it is something that was centered on, it was a gay pride assembly, and it was not. There was historical information shared for the last under 2 minutes of that assembly. So that's something that, I will be reminding teachers of, about the developmental readiness of our youngest students and making sure that we are creating spaces for all of our students and all of our families to be seen and reflected in our curriculum, but also being very clear that we shouldn't be advocating for a singular viewpoint, that we need to create space for multiple viewpoints. And I have a statement I'm just going to read to close that out. But before I read this, I want to just I want to make a comment, because Jared made a point during public comment, and I think it's a valid point in terms of signature lines on emails. And so I will be making that shift this week with staff members and setting an expectation about a standardized expectation about what comes below your signature line. So we're not going to have other sort of advocacy information or links beyond where we work, what school we serve, and maybe what your school's mission is. We're going to work out like what the standardization will be, but it is a valid point that he made. So I just kind of, did that help, Akua, to point to your question?
It did. I think that there's some opportunity here, right, for continued honing in and, developing process and approach in conjunction with the community and parents specifically. But, I think this was a helpful starting point.
So I'd just like to end with a statement, if I could.
Certainly.
So I thought a lot about what I would want to say to our community if they were here, and hopefully they will watch and they will hear this. So our students and families, all of them, are at the heart of our FNESU community. We appreciate that parents entrust their children to us each day with the hope that they'll be safe, respected, welcome, and know that they matter. We share that hope for every single student in FNESU. We recognize that families hold diverse viewpoints about many topics, including how schools should approach various educational and social issues. These conversations matter, and disagreement is natural in a democracy. We hope that we can unite with a shared commitment to the safety, well-being, and academic success of all of our students. Our role is to ensure that while adults may disagree about approaches, every student feels safe and supported in our schools. We work to cultivate students who can think critically, analyze information, consider multiple perspectives, and form their own informed opinions in a manner that ensures belonging, dignity, and justice for all. Families have a right and a responsibility to shape and influence the values and viewpoints of their children. Schools have a responsibility to create safe spaces for all students to be who they are and to teach them that their beliefs and values are welcomed. We're committed to ensuring that our students understand both the richness of diversity, both within our community and our world, and the complexity of varying beliefs and viewpoints. Students can hold varying core values and at the same time be respectful and kind to the people who are different from them. We are listening to community concerns from all sides of the spectrum, and we understand that our work is to educate and inform and not advance a singular viewpoint agenda. Concerns about age of students and developmental readiness to understand complex topics is valid, and we're working to ensure that all of our classrooms are safe, welcoming environments for all of our students. Our curriculum is inclusive of multiple perspectives, viewpoints, and diverse representation. And the last thing that I think I just want to say is that we have both a duty and responsibility to ensure that our classroom spaces are safe and they're free from discrimination, they're free from hazing, harassment, and bullying. And we take those responsibilities very seriously, and we will make sure that we'll continue to focus on making all of our students feel seen and heard and safe and respected in our schools. That's all I have for you.
Thanks, Lynn. Appreciate that. Okay, so we'll move on to our director reports. Gab, do you have anything that you'd like to add or highlight from yours?
I just wanted to say a little bit about calibration because it showed up twice in my board report this week. I think Leah mentioned it and I mentioned it also. And so I just wanted to say that part of that professional learning, an important part of the professional learning and especially the cross-district work is to do calibration, and that is a process where teachers look at student work and compare, they score it, and then they kind of compare how they scored it to one another so that they can get more aligned. They have discussions about what they see in the work, why they scored it the way they did, and they adjust and align their thinking around assessment and scoring of assessment. So that's happening this month or it just happened in writing. Leah just did some writing work with the middle school teachers, and I'll be doing some work with the high school with the portrait of learner indicators and the evidence that has come out of that work so far. So just thought I would highlight that as just a practice that we are focusing on regarding assessment. Other than that, nothing.
Great, thanks so much, Gab. Michelle, anything that you'd like to add? Or
Not a lot. I've had a couple of spotlights this fall, so I haven't had a lot to add, but I will kind of just share in relation to some things that Lynn mentioned around the EQS. We spent some time with all of our leaders this summer doing some self-assessments on implementation and readiness for implementing the EQS. And one of the outcomes from those assessments, I was invited to join the Berkshire staff in some professional learning for the year. So we have a series of professional learning that's really meant to be reflective and practical and enable them to do some professional development learning of their own and work on some projects related to that learning. That'll be continuing throughout the year. I also, kind of to pick up on the attendance work, something that I was been invited to represent our region at a conference for mostly physicians in Connecticut in a couple of weeks. So we're going down with a team from the Everyday Counts grant to represent this district in that work and do a presentation. So that's exciting. And then around the HHB and Title IX, the HHB is a new role for me. I've spent a lot of hours in training this fall. We have about 21 hours of training that I've attended with the legal staff through VISBIT, which is it's not a cost to us, and a number of our principals and assistant principals also joined in that work. So we are calibrating ourselves and trying to figure out the paths forward for really being consolidated in the work that we're doing together.
Nice, excellent. Thanks. Look forward to hearing about the conference. Heather.
Don't really have anything to add right now. We're in the middle of our session, so we're starting to plan out for our winter session that starts early December. We have our annual after-school conference where all the site coordinators and I will go together along with the site coordinators and directors across the state to learn more about some new programming ideas and to collaborate with our colleagues in other towns. And this is the National Lights on After School Week. We talked about it last month. It's in my board notes. So all the sites are doing a great job of having open houses at their sites or special glow parties with the students with a lot of glow-in-the-dark games and just fun ways to celebrate young people and keeping the lights on after school. That's
awesome. Thank you so much. Jamie?
I don't have much of an update either. It's been pretty quiet the last few weeks, knock on wood. We only had one new hire, one resignation, so that's been a nice change. We had one additional leave request, so it's been a good few weeks to catch up on everything that I didn't have finished from August and September.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Dawn.
So I don't have a lot to add. We are in the early stages of planning our community meal that we do every November. So those are going to take place the week of November 10th, depending on what schools, the schools pick different days. So that's, takes a lot of planning, a lot of process, and we're in the early stages of that. We have got our numbers in for our September meals, and we served around 15,400 breakfasts and around 26,000 lunches, and then around 2,700 after school program snacks. Also,
That's just in September.
Just in September, yeah.
Wow.
And then the snacks were only like half of September. And then we also, in all of our elementary schools, we participate in a federal grant, which is Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. And that grant is 100% federally funded. And the purpose of that grant is to introduce students to new and exciting different things and teach them a little bit about that. It has a very strict set of guidelines that go with it. Everything has to be fresh. You can't have it processed, you can't have it cooked or frozen. It has to be a fresh product. And the idea of the program is just really around introducing kids to something different or something that they might not have that opportunity of trying somewhere else. So we do a wide variety of different things.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Dawn. Okay. Vern.
Yeah, not a whole lot. Added a new condensate pump and some pumps and tank to Sheldon. We're actually out to bid right now. I think that's one of the last schools we have to replace boilers. They've served their lifespan there, so we're in pretty good shape there. We'll wait for the bids to come back. We went out to 6 contractors, so we're hoping to get a fair amount of bids for that. Also looking at replacing the backstops in Sheldon. There's some pretty good rot there. We're working with the town right now and Sabrina Stebbins to try to move forward with that project. Berkshire boiler, I'm happy to say, is up and running super, with the exception of a little bit of propane in the kitchen. We're pretty much all wood pellets for heat and hot water there. We just got the digital controls all back up and going. I've got a couple little things just to add to it tomorrow. And yeah, things are going well. So
Great, thank you.
And you're in a bid process for those that are listening for the Snack Shack here in Enosburg,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Do you want to say, I think there's some, people are used to just being able to like pick a project and do a project, but we have bid laws that we need to follow. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, so once we get over a $40,000 threshold for a construction project, there's state law that kicks in that's pretty specific in terms of how you need to bid out a project. So you need to offer it widely, you need to be pretty clear on what you're looking for, and then there's a restriction in terms of who of the bids that come in you're allowed to pick. It's a little more flexible than if we were going out and building a school somewhere or addition, something of that size, but we still do have some requirements that we need to meet in order for the AOE to bless the project. And so we did go out to bid on the Snack Shack. We did not get any bids, and so we're working with the boosters now to refine that, and we'll push it out again.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Morgan. Thanks for. Okay. So any future agenda items that we want to make a note of at the moment? It's always time.
None that I can think of right now.
Okay, our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 19th, here at Enosburg Falls Middle High School in the library. Anything else from the board? So then we need to have our executive session. I'll make a motion to enter, and then we'll let everyone exit who's not in the executive session. So we'll do that by roll. Mort?
Mort's not here anymore.
Oh, Mort left.
Yep.
Okay. Akua?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Mary's an aye. So thank you all so much. Everyone get home safe and see you next month. So we have exited executive session, and the motion is to have the board chair act as per executive session. I'll do that by roll related to the union grievance. So we'll do that by roll. Miranda?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. And so I believe that is everything. I'll make a motion to adjourn. We'll do that by roll. Akua?
Aye.
Miranda?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Mary is an aye. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.